My name is Grace Anderson, and when I was 31, I was working 3 jobs, skipping meals between shifts, and calculating whether I could afford to fill my gas tank all the way. The week I learned my grandfather had been sending me money every month for nearly 4 years, the amount had reached $7,000 a month. I never received any of it. By then, I was an ER nurse on nights, picking up agency shifts on weekends, and teaching a CNA course whenever I could squeeze it in. I was exhausted in a way that had stopped feeling temporary, the kind of tired that settles into your bones and starts introducing itself as your personality. I had gotten so used to surviving carefully that the people around me had begun to mistake it for strength. So when my grandfather smiled across his birthday dinner and asked me, so gently, how the check had been helping, I nearly answered him with the truth before I even understood the question. What my mother did with that money was ugly. What she signed to keep it coming was criminal. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where the women in these stories do not shout to be heard. They document, they wait, and when the moment comes, they set the truth down so plainly that nobody can step around it. If you like quiet stories about women who stop absorbing the damage and start naming it, leave a comment and subscribe. Now let me tell you how I found out I'd been robbed in my own name. The night this really began, I got off a shift at 3 in the morning and sat in my car in the employee lot with the engine off, doing arithmetic by dashboard light. I had enough gas to get home and maybe enough to get across town for the CNA class I taught at 8. Maybe, if I didn't make an extra stop. I ate cold noodles out of a takeout container and stared at the fuel gauge like I could negotiate with it. A couple of hours earlier, I had helped run a code on a man who collapsed in a grocery store checkout line. In the trauma bay, I was all steadiness and sequence and clean hands. That was always the part people saw. What nobody saw was that after the monitors stopped screaming, I'd go sit in my car and wonder whether I could stretch $26 until Friday. That was the contradiction of my life. In crisis, I was excellent. In my own finances, I could never get ahead of the next small emergency. My phone buzzed in the cup holder, a text from my mother. Sunday dinner, Grandpa's coming. I read it once, then again. He was my favorite person in the family, which sounds disloyal until I tell you the rest. He was patient, observant, soft-spoken, the kind of man who asked questions and then actually listened to the answers. Seeing him should have made me happy. Instead, something in me tightened. I blamed the gas gauge. It wasn't the gas gauge. Sunday dinner was at my mother's house, the one my father built before he died. At the time, I didn't know she was close to losing it. I came straight from work, still in scrubs, smelling faintly of sanitizer and stale coffee. My sister Sloane arrived 20 minutes later, tan from a trip to Cabo, with a handbag on her shoulder that cost more than my monthly car payment. Her husband Trent followed behind her, smiling the way men smile when they've never once had to calculate what groceries they can put back. My mother looked at me, took in the scrubs, the fatigue, the cheap shoes, and gave that little sigh she always used when she wanted to say something unkind and still feel elegant doing it. You always make yourself look so burdened, she said, straightening silverware. I let it pass. I had years of practice letting it pass. Then the front door opened and my grandfather walked in. He was 80 then, broad-shouldered still, with the posture of someone who had spent his life lifting real things. He had started in concrete and built a business out of that kind of work. He came straight to me, ignored everyone else for a moment, and pulled me into a hug so firm it made my back pop. When he stepped back, he held my arms and looked at me with this warm, relieved expression I couldn't place. You look good, he said quietly. You've been taking care of yourself, I'm glad. I almost laughed. Nothing about my life suggested I was being taken care of. I was reheating gas station coffee to avoid spending $4. But before I could ask what he meant, Sloan announced dinner and my mother touched his elbow and steered him away with the smooth efficiency of someone redirecting traffic. That should have meant something to me. It didn't, not yet. We were halfway through the meal when he set down his fork, smiled at me, and asked the question that cracked the whole thing open. How's that check been treating you, sweetheart? I thought he meant my paychecks. I gave the answer I always gave older relatives who asked vague financial questions. I'm managing, I said. Hospital pay is hospital pay. Across the table, my mother's hand tightened around her water glass. Then she changed the subject so quickly it was almost impressive, pivoting into one of Sloane's wedding clients and the floral budget and some nonsense about color palettes. I noticed the speed of it, I just didn't know yet what I was noticing. My grandfather looked mildly confused for a second, then smiled again. I kept the little card you sent me, he said, the one from last month, best handwriting in the family. I went still. I hadn't sent him a card. Not last month, not recently, maybe not in years. I opened my mouth and my mother stood so fast her chair scraped. "Daddy, come look at those new photos of Sloane's dog," she said brightly, already taking his arm. And just like that, the moment closed. I drove home with the radio off and his question looping in my head. "How's that check been treating you?" "Which check?" The next morning, an envelope arrived at my apartment that told me I was asking the wrong question. It was which check. It was how many. The return address was an accounting firm I didn't recognize. Inside was a tax document referencing annual gifts made to Grace Anderson on behalf of Walter Hale, my grandfather. The language was dry, formal, impossible to misread. I sat down on my kitchen floor when I got to the number. $84,000 in the previous year. I read it again, then again. I work in medicine. I know how to read a chart. I know the difference between confusion and fact. This was fact. Somebody on paper had been receiving more money in a year than I made, nearly destroying myself in an emergency room. And none of it had ever touched my bank accounts. I pulled up years of statements and went line by line. No monthly deposits, no partial deposits, no account transfers that might have been hidden under something else. Nothing. It wasn't there because it had never come to me. I called my mother that night and kept my voice neutral. "Hey, random question, did Grandpa ever send money to you for me?" Silence. Just half a second, but half a second is forever when you're listening for truth. "What are you talking about?" she said, too soft, too controlled. "Grace, you're overtired, you're imagining problems, get some sleep." Then she hung up. I stared at my phone and understood something important. She hadn't denied it, she had dismissed me. That's a different thing. The next evening, I was teaching blood pressure technique to a room full of CNA students while my mind kept returning to one sentence. My mother handled everything after Dad died. When my father passed, I was 24 and wrecked in the full body way grief does it. She took over the paperwork, the accounts, the forms, the insurance calls. She put pages in front of me and I signed them because I trusted her, because I was drowning, because she seemed composed and I was. I had spent years handling every part of my own life except the one area I should have audited first, the things other people insisted on handling for me. A week later, my mother asked if I could come over and help clean out a spare room. I said yes because saying yes was muscle memory by then, but I also went because I wanted inside the house. While she made coffee, I sat at her desk for maybe 60 seconds too long. Her laptop was open to online banking. I wish I could tell you I hesitated. I didn't. There they were. Monthly deposits, first of the month. 5,000 in the early years, then more, eventually 7, neat, regular, unmistakable, and beneath each one, within a day or less, a transfer out to the same account ending in the same 4 digits every single time. I photographed the screen with my phone. Those 4 digits bothered me, not because I didn't know them, but because I almost did. Then it clicked. Months before, Sloan had written me a reimbursement check after we split a holiday gift for Grandpa. I had noticed the account ending out of habit. Same 4 numbers. My mother was receiving the money. My sister was getting it. I was the name attached to all of it and the only person not seeing a cent. I barely had time to lock my phone before Sloan walked in. "What are you doing on Mom's computer, Grace?" Her voice was sharp enough to cut. I smiled, looking for the donation receipt you said you printed. I didn't argue, I didn't panic. Years in the ER had taught me something useful. When a room is heating up, the calmest person owns it. So I went home and built a file. Tax letter, bank photo, dates, amounts, anything I could verify without touching what I couldn't legally access. And once I laid it all out on my kitchen table, the problem became obvious. I could see the theft. I couldn't yet prove it. The money had moved through accounts that weren't mine. Suspicion was not evidence. I needed someone who understood what counted. So I made an appointment at a legal aid clinic. Dana Whitfield had a small office and the kind of face that had watched too many family disasters to be shocked by one more. She listened without interrupting. Then she explained the piece I had missed. "If your grandfather wrote checks to you," she said, "and somebody signed your name on the back and deposited them into another account, that's forged endorsement. The front of the check looks fine, the fraud is on the back." I leaned forward, "Then I need copies of the backs." "You can't get them," she said. "Not yet, you're not the payer and you're not the account holder. Your grandfather can request them or law enforcement can." I sat with that for a moment. So I need him to believe me before I have the proof that would make him believe me. Dana nodded, "That's exactly the trap. Then she said the part that changed the air in the room. If someone forged your signature for years to negotiate and deposit checks made out to you, that isn't a family misunderstanding. That can be forgery, potentially theft, possibly theft by deception depending on how it was maintained. Maintained. That word stayed with me. Because this wasn't one bad choice, was it? Not if it had lasted 4 years. 2 days later, my mother called and told me we were all gathering at Grandpa's house for his 80th birthday. Family, old friends, a proper dinner. She asked if I'd do the flowers because I was good at the little details. I said yes immediately. Not because I wanted to help, because I understood something she didn't. If the truth came out in private, she could cry, rewrite, isolate, explain. If it came out in a room full of witnesses, she would lose control of the first version of the story. And first versions matter. Before I went around her, I gave her one chance. I stopped by on a weeknight and found her alone at the kitchen table. "Mom," I said gently, "is there anything you want to tell me about Grandpa's money?" She looked at me for 3 full seconds. Then she set down her tea and said, "You don't steal from family, Grace, you borrow." I felt my whole body go cold. Not denial. Justification. "And when were you planning to give it back?" She looked offended as if I were the one being harsh. "When I could, Sloan needed help, the house needed help, your grandfather has plenty, and you've always been the strong one." The strong one. There it was, the family job description I'd been assigned without consent, the one that meant I could absorb impact because everyone had decided I would. Then almost absently she added, "He likes being thanked, you know how sentimental he is." The card. I kept my face still. "You wrote to him as me." She didn't answer directly, she just looked away. That was answer enough. I left, sat in my car, and typed one word into my phone so I wouldn't forget it. Letters. Dana connected me with a forensic accountant named Russ, who agreed to work with me on a payment plan that made me feel slightly ill but less ill than not knowing. He walked through public records, timelines, property pressure, tax issues, business filings. He found exactly what money usually leaves behind when people spend it like rescue. Sloane's business had been in trouble for years. Vendors were slow paid. A lien appeared and then disappeared. My mother's mortgage had drifted dangerously close to default and then recovered. The timing lined up beautifully with a stream of money that wasn't supposed to be theirs. "I can show where the relief appeared," Russ told me. "I can show that the lifestyle doesn't match the visible income, but I cannot prove who signed the checks without the endorsement images." Always the same wall. My grandfather. My mother answered his phone, screened his calls, filtered access the way some women arrange flowers, gracefully, invisibly, until the whole room moves according to their decisions. So I mailed him a card. A real card. My handwriting, my words. "Coffee, just us, no one else. I need to ask you something in person, and I need you to hear it from me." Then I waited. 3 days later, an unfamiliar number called. "Gracie," he said, voice low, "I'm at my friend Earl's diner. I got your card." He paused. "You want to see me without your mother there? I need you to tell me why." We met in a back booth that afternoon. I told him slowly, no drama, no accusations I couldn't support, just the tax letter, the bank photo, the missing deposits, the card I hadn't written. Then I gave him one thing he could verify with his own eyes, a copy of a canceled check he had requested himself from his bank. The front was in his handwriting. "Pay to the order of Grace Anderson, $7,000. He smiled at that part just briefly, the way people do when they see evidence of their own love. Then I said, "Turn it over." He did. On the back was my name in a hand that was not mine. He stared at it for a long time. "That's not your signature," he said at last. "No." He reached into his wallet and pulled out a folded note worn soft at the edges, the card he thought I had written him. The handwriting matched the forged endorsement exactly. Loop for loop. "I carried this with me," he said. "I didn't write it," I said. And I watched the lie rearrange 4 years of his memories in real time. He wanted to confront my mother that night. I stopped him. "If you go to her kitchen alone, she'll cry, she'll say she meant to fix it, she'll tell you Sloan was desperate, she'll tell you I'm stressed and confused. By tomorrow morning, you'll be wondering whether you overreacted." He knew I was right. So instead, I gave him a plan. Because he had written the checks, he could request every endorsement image from the bank, properly, legally, completely. Dana drafted the request, he signed it. And when they come back, I said, we do this once at your party in front of everyone. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Don't let me get weak just because it's my daughter, he said. The waiting after that was brutal. I worked, I taught, I answered Sloane's texts about centerpieces and budget and acted as normal as I had ever acted in my life. My mother reminded me to dress nicely for once. I told her I would. 10 days before the dinner, Dana called. The records came in, she said. Sit down before you open them. I sat on an overturned supply bin in a supply closet at work and opened the file on my phone. There it was. Check after check after check. My grandfather's writing on the front. My forged signature on the back. Deposited by mobile capture into Sloan and Trent's joint account. That alone would have been enough. But it wasn't all. The accounting firm that administered the gifts had correspondence on file, notes of thanks, updates, requests, multiple letters written in my name in the same forged hand, one asking that the amount be increased from $5,000 to $7,000 because Grace hoped to return to school for nurse practitioner training and tuition was expensive. I had never written it. I had never asked him for anything. Someone had used my name to negotiate a raise on the theft. That was the point where it stopped feeling like desperation and started feeling like design. This wasn't a family blur, it was a system. 48 hours before the party, Sloan posted a photo of an expensive watch she'd bought for Grandpa. Caption, family is everything. I stared at it and felt the last of my hesitation disappear. That same evening, my mother called. This is his night, she said. Don't make it heavy, don't make it about yourself. The nerve of that almost made me laugh. I laid out my navy dress after we hung up, the one I wore to funerals and interviews. Clothes for occasions when being taken seriously mattered. The afternoon of the party, I arrived early with the flowers. I found my mother at the kitchen table with bills spread in front of her, foreclosure language visible on one page, reading glasses pushed into hair I suddenly noticed had gone very gray. For a moment, she looked less like an operator and more like a tired woman losing a war. You don't know what it's like, she said quietly, to lose the house your husband built. For one full breath, my sympathy rose up so hard it nearly knocked my resolve loose. Then I remembered eating cold noodles in a parking lot and counting quarters for gas, while she kept that house afloat with money sent for me. I know what it's like to lose things slowly, I said. I've had practice. Then I took the roses into the dining room. An hour before guests arrived, my grandfather met me there. He had invited an old friend to dinner, an attorney named Holloway, just as a guest, technically, just someone who understood paper and consequence. I carried only 3 checks in my folder. Dana had been clear, too many documents looks like vengeance. A few clean pieces look like truth. My grandfather touched the folder and looked at me with an expression that made me think of my father. He'd be proud of how you're doing this, he said. I had to look away. The party itself was beautiful. Candlelight, silver, good china, my flowers opening under the warmth of the room, 14 people at the table, Sloan sparkling in a dress bought with other people's emergencies, Trent pouring wine, my mother seated at Grandpa's right hand exactly where she always placed herself. I made conversation, smiled past bread. The strangest part was that everyone else thought they were attending a birthday dinner. I knew I was sitting inside an evidence room with linen napkins. Then Grandpa tapped his glass. The room quieted. Before cake, he said, I want to say something to my granddaughter. Faces turned to me, warm, expectant, affectionate. Then he asked, in the same tender tone he had used all those other times, how's that check treating you, sweetheart? A few people chuckled. My mother went absolutely still. I set down my glass. Funny you should ask, I said. Then I opened the folder. I laid the 3 checks in the center of the table, front side up, where the candles lit my name and the amount clearly. Pay to the order of Grace Anderson, $7,000. 3 of them 3 months from nearly 4 years. Grandpa has been sending these to help me, I said evenly. For a long time, I never received any of the money. My mother moved first. Grace, she said sharply, that practiced, soothing voice slipping over panic. This is not the moment, you're tired and confused. Turn one over, I said. Nobody moved. Then my grandfather reached down, picked up the nearest check and turned it over. There was my name. Not written by me. And beneath it, the deposit information for an account that was not mine. An aunt gasped. The room changed temperature. My grandfather looked directly at Sloane's. Is this your account number? She went white. Trent set the wine bottle down very carefully, like sudden movement might make it worse. I stayed seated. I did not sign that, I said, and the person who did has already been identified. That broke Sloane. She stood so fast her chair fell backward. You ungrateful, she started, then lost the rest in pure anger. You never needed it like I did, you never used anything, it was just sitting there. There it was, not remorse, resentment that I had finally looked up. My mother was crying now, real or practiced, I honestly couldn't tell anymore. I was going to repay it, she said, I just needed time, I couldn't lose the house, Sloane was drowning. I let them both talk. Loud people are often most useful when you stop interrupting them. When the room finally thinned into silence again, I spoke softly. Mom, I said, you told me you don't steal from family, you borrow, so show me the loan agreement. Nothing. Of course there was nothing. No permission from me, no repayment schedule, no consent, no paper trail that described a loan because it had never been one. 4 years, I said, 3 jobs, my name, her account, those are small facts, but they stay facts. At the head of the table, my grandfather stood a little straighter. For 4 years, he said, voice rough now, I thought my granddaughter took my help and stopped caring enough to call me. I thought she wrote to me, I thought she thanked me. He turned to my mother. You wrote those letters, didn't you? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Then Holloway, calm as weather, set down his drink and spoke for the first time. You should all be very careful what you say next, he said. Forged endorsements, forged correspondence used to obtain increased payments, negotiated instruments deposited into an account not belonging to the named payee, those are not family misunderstandings. Those are legal issues. The word forgery passed through the room like cold air under a door. I closed the folder. I don't need apologies tonight, I said. I need restitution and I need a report filed where it belongs. Then I looked at the arrangements in the center of the table. The flowers were my contribution, I added. I'll send the invoice to the right person. And I stood up. For the first time in my life, I left a family dinner without trying to make everyone else comfortable first. I thought that would be the hardest part. It was. At home that night, Dana called again. There were more letters. Over 4 years, someone had written a steady stream of updates in my name, thank you notes, explanations, requests, reassurances whenever my grandfather might have wondered why I sounded distant or why the money needed to increase. One even asked whether 6 months could be advanced for a program I was never enrolled in. That was when the full shape of it finally settled. It wasn't theft hidden inside chaos. It was maintenance. A sustained use of my forged identity to extract escalating gifts from an old man who loved me. The diverted total landed near $278,000 by the time the accounting finished. Restitution was secured against my mother's house and what was left of Sloane's business. The criminal side moved separately and it's still moving now. Trent cooperated the moment his own exposure became real, which told me everything I needed to know about his courage. My grandfather changed everything immediately. If he wanted to help me now, the money came directly to me, no middle hands, no family routing. He also funded a nursing scholarship in my father's name because he said that was the kind of legacy my father would have wanted more than watches and staged generosity. I quit the weekend agency job. I kept teaching the CNA class because I loved it, not because I needed every extra dollar to survive. I sleep now. That is not a poetic statement. It is a measurable improvement. I sleep through the night. I wake up without reaching for my phone to do panic math before sunrise. I do not speak directly to my mother or sister anymore, not because I enjoy punishment, not because I think exile heals people, but because access was the thing they abused first, access to my name, my silence, my benefit of the doubt. So I ended their access. On my refrigerator, I keep a photocopy of one canceled check. Sometimes I look at the front, sometimes I turn it over and look at the forged signature on the back. Not to stay angry, to stay clear. Because protecting what belongs to you is not revenge. Refusing to be quietly used is not cruelty. And telling the truth before someone else gets to rewrite it is not what destroys a family. Sometimes it's the first honest thing anyone has done in that family in years. That's my story. 4 years, 3 jobs, one question asked at the right table. If there is money in your family that one person always insists on handling, If there is a parent or sibling who filters access, explains too quickly, or gets offended when you ask to see the paper, ask anyway. Ask while your voice is still calm. Ask before survival turns into habit. And if this story found you at exactly the right moment, leave a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.